First contact and confusion. The massive starship Celestial Harmony hung in orbit around the gaseous planet Nebula Prime, its hull gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. Inside, beings from 100 different worlds bustled through its corridors, a menagerie of shapes, sizes, and evolutionary paths. Among them, looking decidedly out of place, strode Jack Cooper, one of the first humans to be invited to the Galactic Confederation's prestigious Psychic Sensitivity Training Academy. Jack's heavy boots echoed through the hallway as he made his way to the orientation chamber. He couldn't help but notice the sideways glances and hastily averted gazes from his alien counterparts. Some even recoiled as he passed, their tentacles or appendages drawing close to their bodies. "Great," Jack muttered under his breath. "I haven't even started class, and I'm already the weird kid." As he entered the chamber, a wave of hushed whispers washed over him. The room was filled with beings of all descriptions, from crystalline entities that refracted light in dazzling patterns to amorphous blobs that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Jack straightened his back and marched toward an empty seat, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. A tall, willowy creature with iridescent skin and 4 arms gracefully floated to the center of the room. Its voice, when it spoke, seemed to bypass Jack's ears entirely and resonate directly in his mind. "Greetings, esteemed students. I am Professor Zilikshin, your lead instructor for this cycle. We are honored to welcome representatives from all corners of the galaxy, including..." Here, Zilikshin paused, its large, multifaceted eyes swiveling to focus on Jack. "Our first participants from the newly discovered Death World, Earth." The whispers intensified, and Jack felt the weight of 100 alien gazes upon him. He resisted the urge to squirm in his seat. "Now," Zilikshin continued, "let us begin with a simple exercise to attune our psychic energies. Please, close your primary sensory organs and reach out with your minds. Feel the ebb and flow of cosmic consciousness around you." Jack watched as his classmates assumed various meditative postures. Some levitated, others seemed to phase partially out of reality, and a few appeared to turn themselves inside out. Feeling decidedly out of his depth, Jack simply closed his eyes and tried to reach out with his mind, whatever that meant. After a few moments of straining and imagining, he was trying to touch the ceiling with his brain. Jack heard a startled gasp. He opened his eyes to find Professor Zilikshin hovering directly in front of him, its face a mask of shock and confusion. "Mr. Cooper," the alien said, its mental voice tinged with disbelief, "what exactly are you doing?" Jack blinked. "Reaching out with my mind. Like you said." Zilikshin's skin rippled with colors Jack couldn't even name. "But your psychic presence, it's like a void. A black hole in the fabric of consciousness. How is this possible?" Before Jack could respond, a gelatinous being to his left suddenly lost cohesion, splattering across the floor with a distressed gurgle. 2 crystalline entities began vibrating at an alarming frequency, and a small furry creature simply fainted dead away. "Okay," Jack said slowly, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "I think we might have gotten off on the wrong foot here. Maybe we should start with something a little more basic." Professor Zilikshin composed itself with visible effort. "Yes, perhaps that would be wise. Class, let us move on to the fundamentals of psychic shielding. Mr. Cooper, if you would kindly refrain from any mental exertion for the moment." As the class shifted focus, Jack couldn't help but feel a mix of embarrassment and amusement. He'd known this training would be challenging, but he hadn't expected to cause an interstellar incident within the first 5 minutes. The rest of the orientation proceeded with Jack trying his best to follow along, but it quickly became apparent that human minds operated on a fundamentally different level than those of his classmates. While others effortlessly projected thoughts, manipulated energy fields, and perceived extrasensory information, Jack found himself struggling to even grasp the basic concepts. During a break in the proceedings, a small, insectoid being cautiously approached Jack, Its antennae twitched nervously as it spoke in a series of clicks and whistles that Jack's universal translator rendered into English. "Excuse me, Earth being," it chittered. "I am Zixtic of the Hive Collective. We are curious. How do your kind communicate without telepathy? How do you navigate space-time without psychic anchors? How do you exist?" Jack couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, Zixtic, we talk. We use our voices, write things down, send messages. As for navigation, we got some pretty nifty computers and good old-fashioned math. And existing, we just kind of do it." Zixtic's compound eyes seemed to spiral in confusion. "Fascinating. Primitive, yet intriguing. Your species' survival on a death world without psychic abilities is most perplexing." As more curious aliens gathered around, peppering Jack with questions, he began to realize that his presence here was more than just a cultural exchange. Humans, it seemed, were an anomaly in a galaxy where psychic abilities were the norm. Their very existence challenged fundamental assumptions about sapient life. Professor Zilikshin drifted over, its earlier shock replaced by a keen scientific interest. "Mr. Cooper, I believe we may need to adjust our curriculum significantly to accommodate your unique perspective. Tell me, how do humans typically approach problem-solving and learning?" Jack grinned, an idea forming. "Well, Professor, we got a saying back on Earth. Hands-on experience is the best teacher. How about instead of me trying to do things your way, you all try doing things our way for a bit?" The aliens exchanged glances, a mix of trepidation and curiosity evident in their varied expressions. Zilikshin's skin shimmered with what Jack was beginning to recognize as excitement. "An intriguing proposal, Mr. Cooper. Very well. Let us see what insights your Deathworld perspectives might offer." As the class reconvened, Jack found himself at the center of attention, no longer an outsider, but a source of fascinating new possibilities. He couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they were about to show the universe that there was more than one way to reach for the stars. Little did Jack know, this was just the beginning of an adventure that would challenge everything the Galactic Confederation thought they knew about psychic abilities, consciousness, and the very nature of intelligence itself. The Deathworlders were here, and the universe would never be the same. Unexpected talents. The following days at the Psychic Sensitivity Training Academy were a whirlwind of bizarre experiences for Jack Cooper. As the lone human in a sea of psychically gifted aliens, he found himself at the center of an impromptu experiment in cross-species education. Professor Zilikshin had taken Jack's suggestion to heart, restructuring the curriculum to incorporate human problem-solving methods alongside traditional psychic techniques. The result was a chaotic, but oddly effective blend of approaches that left both Jack and his alien classmates constantly surprised. On this particular day, the class gathered in what Jack had dubbed the Psychic Gym, a vast chamber filled with strange artifacts and swirling energy fields. The day's lesson: psychic shielding and mental fortitude. Today, Professor Zilikshin announced, its mental voice resonating through the room, "We will attempt to merge our standard practices with Mr. Cooper's hands-on approach. Please observe." The professor gestured towards a shimmering, opalescent barrier at the far end of the room. "This is a standard psychic barrier, designed to repel mental intrusions. Normally, we would spend several cycles meditating to attune our minds to its frequency. However, in the spirit of our new curriculum, we will attempt a more direct method." Jack stepped forward, eyeing the barrier with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "So, what exactly am I supposed to do here, Prof?" Zilikshin's skin rippled with what Jack had come to recognize as amusement. "Why, Mr. Cooper, you're going to try to walk through it." A collective gasp rose from the assembled aliens. Zixtic, the insectoid being who had become something of a friend to Jack, chittered nervously. But Professor, without proper attunement, the psychic backlash could be most unpleasant. Jack grinned, cracking his knuckles. Well, no time like the present to find out, right? Before anyone could object further, Jack strode purposefully towards the barrier. As he approached, he could feel a slight pressure against his skin, like walking into a strong wind. The aliens watched in fascinated horror, many covering their sensory organs or retreating to a safe distance. Jack reached out, pressing his hand against the shimmering field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like shattering glass and a flash of blinding light, the barrier collapsed. As the light faded, the class saw Jack standing unharmed on the other side, looking slightly singed but decidedly triumphant. "Ha," he said, patting himself down. Tamely. The room erupted into chaos. Some aliens cheered, others cowered, and a few seemed to be having existential crises on the spot. Professor Zelixian floated over to Jack, its multifaceted eyes wide with disbelief. "Mr. Cooper," it said, its mental voice a mix of awe and concern. "How did you do that?" Jack shrugged. "Honestly, I just kind of pushed through. It felt like there was something there, but it wasn't solid, you know. So I figured, why not just keep going?" Zelixian's skin cycled through a rainbow of colors as it processed this information. "Fascinating. It seems that your lack of psychic sensitivity may, paradoxically, be a form of strength. The barrier was designed to repel mental energy, but your mind, it's like a void, the black hole that simply absorbed the psychic force." As word of Jack's feat spread through the academy, humans quickly became the subject of intense scientific interest. Researchers and instructors from various disciplines clamored to run tests and experiments, eager to understand how a species with no apparent psychic abilities had survived on a death world, let alone achieved space travel. Jack found himself at the center of it all, a reluctant ambassador for humanity. Each day brought new challenges and bizarre tests of his abilities. One memorable session involved an attempt to teach Jack telepathy. The aliens set up a complex array of psychic amplifiers, determined to detect even the faintest mental signal from the human's mind. Jack sat in the center of the array, surrounded by expectant alien faces. "All right," he said, "here goes nothing." He screwed up his face in concentration, imagining he was shouting his thoughts as loudly as possible. The result was unexpected, to say the least. While no telepathic signal was detected, every piece of electronic equipment in the room suddenly malfunctioned. Screens flickered with random patterns, comm devices emitted strange noises, and the lights pulsed in an erratic rhythm. As the startled aliens rushed to shut down the malfunctioning equipment, Jack couldn't help but laugh. "Well," he said, "I guess that's one way to make some noise." Professor Zelixian, who had been observing the experiment, floated over to Jack. Its mental voice held a note of excitement rarely heard before. "Mr. Cooper, I believe we may have stumbled upon something revolutionary. Your mind, while not telepathic in the conventional sense, seems to have a profound effect on energy fields and electronic systems. This could explain how your species has advanced technologically without psychic abilities." Jack considered this. "So, you're saying we might be natural technopaths or something?" "Perhaps," Zelixian mused. "Or perhaps your minds have evolved to interact with the physical world in ways we've never considered. The implications are staggering." As the days passed, Jack and his classmates began to find a strange sort of equilibrium. The aliens learned to approach problems from new angles, incorporating physical interaction and logical reasoning alongside their psychic abilities. In turn, Jack found that while he couldn't match his classmates in telepathy or telekinesis, he had a knack for understanding and manipulating the technology that underpinned much of their psychic training. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging exercise involving psychic navigation, Jack had a breakthrough. While his classmates struggled to mentally map a complex, multidimensional space, Jack approached the holographic display and began manipulating it with his hands. "Look," he explained, rotating the image and zooming in on key points. "If you think of it like a 3D puzzle, it's not so bad. See how these energy currents flow? It's like a river system. You just need to find the main channels and everything else falls into place. To everyone's surprise, Jack's physical demonstration made the concept click for many of the struggling aliens. Soon, the class was gathered around the hologram, a mix of tentacles, claws, and hands joining Jack's as they explored the space together. Professor Zilikshin watched this collaboration with growing excitement. Remarkable, it murmured to itself. Simply remarkable. As the class ended and the students filed out, chattering excitedly about the day's lessons, Zilikshin called Jack aside. "Mr. Cooper," it said, its mental voice serious, "I believe we may need to accelerate your training. Your unique perspective is proving invaluable, and I fear we may have need of it sooner than anticipated." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, Professor?" Zilikshin's skin darkened, a sign Jack had learned to associate with concern. "There have been disturbances in the outer reaches of Confederation space, anomalies that defy our usual methods of detection and analysis. The Council believes that your human intuition, combined with our psychic techniques, might be the key to understanding what we're facing." Jack felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had come here to learn, to be a bridge between humanity and the galactic community. But now it seemed he might be stepping into something much bigger. "All right, Professor," he said, squaring his shoulders. "What do you need me to do?" Zilikshin's skin lightened slightly, relief evident in its posture. "For now, continue your training. Push your boundaries. And be prepared. I fear the galaxy may soon face a challenge unlike any we've encountered before." As Jack left the classroom, his mind racing with possibilities, he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they were already making waves. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was determined to show the universe what Deathworlders could do. Little did Jack know, the true test of humanity's unique abilities was just around the corner, and it would shake the foundations of the Galactic Confederation to its core. The psychic incident. 2 weeks into the accelerated training program, Jack Cooper found himself standing before a device that looked like a cross between a particle accelerator and a dream catcher. Gossamer strands of energy pulsed between intricate metallic rings, creating a hypnotic display that hurt his eyes if he looked at it too long. "This, Mr. Cooper," Professor Zilikshin explained, its mental voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension, "is the Nexus Amplifier. It's designed to enhance and focus psychic energies, allowing for communication and perception across vast distances of space-time." Jack eyed the machine warily. "And you want me to, what? Stick my head in it?" A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled alien students. Zixtick, standing nearby, clicked its mandibles in what Jack had learned was laughter. "Not quite, Earth friend. The goal is to attune your consciousness to the amplifier's frequency. For us, it would be a simple matter of mental projection. For you, Mr. Cooper," Zilikshin interjected, "we believe a more direct approach may be necessary. Please, place your hands on the outer ring." Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself. Over the past weeks, he'd gotten used to being the guinea pig for all sorts of bizarre experiments. Still, something about this particular device set his nerves on edge. Pushing aside his apprehension, he reached out and placed his palms on the cool metal of the outer ring. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a suddenness that made him gasp, Jack felt a jolt of energy surge through his body. The world around him seemed to blur and stretch, colors bleeding into one another in impossible ways. He heard voices, thousands, millions of them, all whispering at once in languages he couldn't understand. "Remarkable," he heard Zilikshin's voice, sounding distant and distorted. "His mind is interfacing with the amplifier in ways I've never seen. The energy readings are off the charts." Jack wanted to respond, to tell them that something felt wrong, but he couldn't form the words. The voices were getting louder, more insistent. Images flashed before his eyes. Alien worlds, vast starships, and something else, something dark and vast and hungry. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Jack was dimly aware of panicked shouts and the sound of equipment overloading. "Shut it down," someone yelled. "The feedback loop is destabilizing the core." "We can't," came another voice. "It's not responding to our commands." Through the chaos, Jack struggled to focus. The thing he had seen, the dark presence, it was getting closer. He could feel its malevolent intent, its insatiable hunger. With a clarity born of desperation, Jack realized that he had inadvertently opened a door, and something terrible was about to come through. Gritting his teeth against the pain now lancing through his skull, Jack did the only thing he could think of. He pushed back. In that moment, Jack Cooper tapped into something primal, something uniquely human. It wasn't psychic power in the way his alien classmates understood it. It was raw will, the stubborn determination that had allowed humanity to survive and thrive on their harsh homeworld. To the astonished aliens watching, Jack's body began to glow with a strange bluish light. The overloading equipment stabilized, then began to power down. The chaotic energies swirling around the Nexus amplifier coalesced, forming a tight vortex centered on Jack. With a final, Herculean effort, Jack wrenched his hands away from the device. There was a thunderous crack, like the sound of reality itself splitting. And then, silence. Jack collapsed to the floor, panting heavily. Around him, the alien students and instructors stood in stunned silence, their various sensory organs fixed on the smoking ruin of the Nexus amplifier. Professor Zelixian was the first to approach, its normally iridescent skin a pale, shocked white. "Mr. Cooper," it said, its mental voice barely a whisper. What did you do?" Jack looked up, his eyes still glowing faintly with residual energy. "I closed the door," he said simply, before slumping into unconsciousness. In the days that followed, the Psychic Sensitivity Training Academy was abuzz with activity. Researchers and high-ranking Confederation officials swarmed the facility, all eager to understand what had happened during the Nexus incident, as it came to be known. Jack, after spending a day in the medical bay, where the alien doctors seemed more interested in studying him than treating him, found himself the center of attention once again. But this time, the looks he received from his alien classmates weren't of confusion or trepidation. They were looks of awe and not a little fear. A week after the incident, Jack was summoned to a meeting with the Academy's board of directors. As he entered the conference room, he was surprised to see not only Professor Zelixian and the other instructors, but also several stern-looking aliens wearing what he assumed were Confederation military uniforms. An imposing, multi-limbed being at the head of the table fixed Jack with all 7 of its eyes. "Mr. Cooper," it said, its mental voice resonating with authority, "I am High Commander Vexalia of the Confederation Defense Force. We need to talk about what happened during your interface with the Nexus amplifier." Jack straightened in his chair, suddenly very aware that this was no ordinary debriefing. "Of course, Commander. Though I'm not sure how much help I can be. Most of it's a blur." Vexalia's tentacles writhed in a gesture Jack couldn't interpret. "What you experienced, Mr. Cooper, was more than a simple malfunction. Your mind, untrained and unshielded as it was, made contact with something out there in the void. Something that has long been watching our civilization, waiting for an opportunity." A chill ran down Jack's spine as he remembered the dark presence he had sensed. What was it? Professor Zelixian stepped forward, its skin cycling through worried colors. "We're not entirely sure. But based on the energy readings and the psionic echoes we detected, we believe it may be an ancient, non-corporeal entity, a being of pure thought and energy, vastly powerful and utterly alien." "Great," Jack muttered. "So I accidentally poked a cosmic horror. Just another Tuesday for the human, right?" His attempt at humor fell flat as Vexalia leaned forward, its mental voice grave. "This is no laughing matter, Mr. Cooper. This entity, whatever it is, has been probing our defenses for centuries. We've always managed to keep it at bay. But your interaction with the Nexus amplifier, It gave it a glimpse of our inner workings. And worse, it seems to have taken a particular interest in you, and by extension, humanity. Jack felt a weight settling in his stomach. What does that mean for Earth? For my people? The room was silent for a moment before Vex'ahlia spoke again. It means, Mr. Cooper, that humanity has just been thrust onto the galactic stage in a way none of us anticipated. Your species' unique mental structure, your ability to interact with psychic energies in ways we still don't understand. It may be our best defense against this threat. And our worst liability, added another military official, their gelatinous form quivering with agitation. If this entity can use humans as a conduit, that's enough, General, Vex'ahlia cut in sharply. Turning back to Jack, the High Commander's voice softened slightly. Mr. Cooper, I won't lie to you. The situation is grave, but you've also given us hope. Your actions during the incident, your ability to close the door as you put it, it's unprecedented. Jack took a deep breath, trying to process everything he'd just heard. So what happens now? Professor Zelixian stepped forward, placing a comforting tendril on Jack's shoulder. Now, Jack, your real training begins. We need to understand your abilities, to help you harness them, and we need to prepare for what's coming. As Jack looked around the room, at the mix of determined and fearful alien faces, he felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. This wasn't what he had signed up for when he joined the Academy, but he was beginning to realize that humanity's role in the galaxy was going to be far more complex and vital than anyone had imagined. All right, he said, squaring his shoulders. Let's get to work. We've got a universe to save. As the meeting adjourned and plans were set in motion, none of them could have guessed the true scale of the challenges that lay ahead. The cosmic chess game had begun, and humanity, for better or worse, was now a key player. Galactic threats and human ingenuity. The months following the Nexus incident were a blur of intense training, bizarre experiments, and late-night strategy sessions for Jack Cooper. The Psychic Sensitivity Training Academy had been transformed into a hub of frantic activity, with researchers, military personnel, and diplomats from across the Galactic Confederation converging to address the looming threat. Jack's days were filled with a grueling regimen designed to hone his unique abilities. Under Professor Zelixian's guidance, he learned to consciously manipulate the strange energy that seemed to emanate from his mind. It wasn't psychic power as the aliens understood it, but rather a form of mental static that could disrupt or amplify psychic fields. One particularly memorable training session found Jack facing off against a squad of elite Confederation Psi warriors. The alien soldiers, each a master of mental combat, circled Jack warily. Remember, Mr. Cooper, Zelixian's voice echoed in his mind. Focus on the feeling you had during the incident. Let your mind become a void, a black hole that absorbs their psychic attacks. Jack nodded, closing his eyes and concentrating. He felt the first prodding tendrils of the Psi warrior's mental assault and instinctively pushed back. The result was spectacular. The alien soldiers reeled as if struck, their carefully constructed psychic defenses shattering under the onslaught of Jack's untamed mental energy. Remarkable. High Commander Vex'ahlia observed from the sidelines, all 7 eyes blinking in rapid succession. It's as if his mind is a psychic scrambler, disrupting the very fabric of psionic space around him. As impressive as these developments were, they were overshadowed by the growing sense of dread permeating the Academy. Reports from the fringes of Confederation space spoke of strange anomalies, ships going missing, entire colonies falling silent, and unsettling distortions in the psychic backdrop of the galaxy. It was during one of these tense briefings that alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as Jack and the others raced to the command center. Report. Vex'ahlia barked as they burst into the room. A harried-looking technician, their tentacles a blur over holographic controls, responded. High Commander, we're detecting a massive disturbance in Sector 7 Gamma. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a real-time image of deep space. At first, Jack saw nothing unusual. Then, slowly, he began to notice a distortion, like heat waves on a scorching day. The distortion grew, spreading across the screen like an oil slick. "By the cosmic egg," someone whispered. "It's here." As they watched in horror, the distortion coalesced into a vast, shadowy form. It defied description, seeming to shift and change even as they looked at it. Tendrils of darkness reached out, enveloping nearby stars and leaving only void in their wake. "It's consuming everything in its path," Zelikshin said, its mental voice tight with fear. "Our psychic defenses are useless against it." Jack stared at the screen, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He recognized the presence. It was the same malevolent entity he had sensed during the Nexus incident, but now it was here, in the physical universe, and hungry. "We need to evacuate the sector immediately," Vexalia ordered. "Alert all nearby systems and—" The High Commander's words were cut off as the view screen suddenly went dark. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a voice, if it could be called that, filled the room. It was like 1,000 whispers overlaid with the sound of tearing metal, and it spoke directly into their minds. "At last," it said, "the veil is pi or CD. Your reality is ours too if he is upon." Jack clutched his head, fighting against the invasive presence. Around him, he saw his alien companions doing the same, many of them writhing in obvious pain. "The one who opnedthdor," the voice continued, and Jack felt its attention focus on him like a spotlight. "You are diff or int. Fascinating. We will consume you dust, so that we may say your unique Yugi flavor." Fighting through the pain, Jack stepped forward. "Like hell you will," he growled. Drawing on everything he had learned, Jack focused his mind, imagining it as a shield, a barrier against the encroaching darkness. To the astonishment of the aliens watching, a nimbus of blue-white energy began to form around him. "Mr. Cooper," Zelikshin said weakly, "what are you doing?" Jack grinned, though it was more a baring of teeth than an expression of joy. "What humans do best, Professor. I'm improvising." With a yell that was equal parts defiance and exertion, Jack thrust his hands forward. The energy surrounding him pulsed, then shot out in a blinding beam that struck the view screen. Instead of shattering the screen, the energy seemed to pass through it, lancing out into space. On the screen, they saw Jack's energy beam strike the vast, shadowy entity. There was a moment of silence, then a psychic shriek that threatened to shatter their minds. "Impossible," the voice howled. "You are inhabitants. Insects. Motis of dust in da cosmic wind." "Maybe," Jack grunted, sweat pouring down his face as he maintained the energy beam. "But we're really annoying motes of dust." The shadowy form on the screen began to writhe, tendrils of darkness thrashing wildly. Slowly, inexorably, it began to shrink, as if being pushed back by Jack's mental assault. "Zelikshin," Jack called out, his voice strained. "The Nexus amplifier. We need to recreate it. Now." The professor's eyes widened in understanding. "Of course. We can use it to boost your signal, to push this entity back to its own dimension." What followed was a frantic race against time. As Jack held the entity at bay through sheer force of will, the aliens worked to quickly assemble a makeshift version of the Nexus amplifier. Vexalia coordinated with Confederation ships in nearby sectors, positioning them to create a psychic containment field. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, Zelikshin called out, "It's ready." Jack, his legs barely supporting him, staggered to the hastily assembled device. As soon as his hands touched it, he felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. His consciousness expanded, encompassing not just the room or the space station, but entire sectors of the galaxy. With this enhanced perception, Jack could see the entity for what it truly was, a cancer in the fabric of space-time, a hungering void that sought to devour all of reality. And he knew, with a certainty that transcended rational thought, exactly what needed to be done. Focusing all of his will, all of his uniquely human stubbornness and determination, Jack pushed. He pushed with his mind, with his spirit, with every fiber of his being. He pushed against the darkness, against the hunger, against the very concept of oblivion. On view screens throughout the Confederation, beings of 1,000 different species watched in awe as a wave of blue-white energy swept across the galaxy, driving the shadowy entity before it. The entity fought, its dark tendrils lashing out in fury and desperation. But it was no match for the combined might of Jack's amplified will and the Confederation's united psychic defenses. With a final, reality-shaking shriek, the entity was forced back through the dimensional rift it had created. The rift itself collapsed, sealing shut with a flash of light that momentarily outshone every star in the sector. In the sudden silence that followed, Jack swayed on his feet, then collapsed. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness claimed him was Professor Zilikshin's awed whisper, "By all that's sacred, he did it. The human actually did it." As darkness enveloped him, Jack allowed himself a small smile. Not bad for a Deathworlder, he thought. Not bad at all. A new understanding. Jack Cooper awoke to the soft hum of medical equipment and the gentle glow of bioluminescent lighting. As his eyes adjusted, he realized he was in the Academy's medical bay, surrounded by a variety of alien medical staff and concerned friends. "Welcome back, Mr. Cooper," Professor Zilikshin's familiar mental voice greeted him. The alien skin was cycling through a kaleidoscope of colors that Jack had come to recognize as extreme excitement. "How are you feeling?" Jack groaned, pushing himself up to a sitting position. "Like I went 10 rounds with a black hole and lost." "Did we? Did it work?" A new voice answered, resonating with authority. "Indeed it did, Mr. Cooper." High Commander Vexalia stepped into view, all 7 eyes focused intently on Jack. "Thanks to your actions, the entity has been banished back to its own dimension, and the rift has been sealed. You've saved not just the Confederation, but quite possibly the entire galaxy." Jack blinked, the enormity of what had happened slowly sinking in. "Huh," he said finally. "Not bad for a day's work." A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled aliens. Zixstick, who had been nervously clicking its mandibles nearby, chittered with laughter. Earth friend Jack jokes, even in the face of cosmic horrors. Truly, humans are remarkable beings. Over the next few days, as Jack recovered his strength, he was brought up to speed on the aftermath of the incident. News of the humans' pivotal role in saving the galaxy had spread like wildfire throughout the Confederation. Overnight, humanity had gone from being seen as primitive newcomers to respected allies. The Galactic Council has been in emergency session since the event, Vexalia informed Jack during one of their briefings. They're discussing a complete overhaul of our defense strategies, incorporating what we've learned about human mental abilities. Professor Zilikshin nodded enthusiastically, its tendrils waving. "Indeed. We've already begun adapting our curriculum here at the Academy. Your unique approach to psychic phenomena has opened up entirely new avenues of research." Jack scratched his head, still somewhat overwhelmed by it all. "That's great and all, but what does this mean for Earth, for humans in general?" Vexalia's mental voice took on a serious tone. "That, Mr. Cooper, is the subject of much debate. Your world is still in its infancy when it comes to galactic affairs. This incident has accelerated your species' integration into the wider community by centuries, if not millennia. We're establishing a permanent diplomatic mission to Earth," the High Commander continued. "We'll be offering technological and scientific exchanges, as well as inviting more humans to join programs like the one you participated in here." Jack nodded slowly, his mind racing with the implications. "And what about the thing? The entity? Is it gone for good?" A moment of silence fell over the room. It was Elixion who finally answered, its skin darkening to a deep, worried purple. "We cannot be certain. While your actions have driven it back and sealed the rift, beings of such cosmic scale are not so easily defeated. We must remain vigilant." "Which is why," Vexalia interjected, "we would like to offer you a permanent position within the Confederation Defense Force, Mr. Cooper. Your unique abilities and perspective could be invaluable in preparing for any future incursions." Jack's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Me? A space cop? That's quite an offer." "Take some time to consider it," Vexalia said. "In the meantime, there's a certain ceremony we need to prepare for." A week later, Jack found himself standing on a stage before the largest and most diverse gathering of alien species he had ever seen. The grand auditorium of the Galactic Confederation's central hub was packed to capacity, with holographic feeds broadcasting the event to trillions of beings across the galaxy. High Commander Vexalia stood at the podium, its voice resonating through the minds of all present. "Today, we honor not just an individual, but a turning point in galactic history. Jack Cooper of Earth, step forward." As Jack approached, he couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought him here. From a confused newcomer in a psychic classroom to a defender of the galaxy, it was almost too much to believe. "In recognition of your unprecedented bravery and the unique gifts you have brought to our galactic community," Vexalia intoned, "we hereby bestow upon you the Order of the Cosmic Accord, our highest honor." A shimmering medal was placed around Jack's neck, its iridescent surface seeming to capture the light of 1,000 stars. "Furthermore," Vexalia continued, "let it be known that from this day forward, humanity is granted full membership status within the Galactic Confederation, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that entails." The auditorium erupted in a cacophony of cheers, whistles, and other, more alien sounds of approval. Jack, momentarily stunned, found his voice at last. "Thank you," he said, his words carried to every corner of the galaxy. "On behalf of Earth and all of humanity, I accept this honor with gratitude and humility. We may be newcomers to the galactic stage, but we're quick learners. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's facing the unknown with courage and creativity." He paused, looking out over the sea of alien faces. "We don't have natural psychic abilities. We can't read minds or move objects with our thoughts. But we have something else. An unbreakable spirit, a drive to explore and understand, and a willingness to stand up for what's right, no matter the odds." Jack's voice grew stronger, filled with determination. "Whatever challenges the universe throws at us, whether they're cosmic horrors or just the day-to-day struggles of galactic cooperation, know this: humanity is here to stay. We're your allies, your friends, and together, there's nothing we can't accomplish." As the applause washed over him, Jack caught the eye of Professor Elixion in the front row. The alien skin was shimmering with pride and something that looked remarkably like tears. In that moment, Jack knew he had found his place in the universe. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with wonders and dangers beyond imagination. But with the unique strengths of humanity combined with the vast knowledge and abilities of their new alien allies, he was confident they could face whatever the cosmos had in store. As he left the stage, metal glinting on his chest, Jack couldn't help but smile. The Deathworlders had arrived on the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same again.